Thanks for tuning into the Kentucky Running Podcast presented by John's Run Walk Shop in Lexington. My name is Matt Reno. I'm your host today, and we are going to be talking about track. We've got a great guest today, Gary Steele. He's been a track and field coach for over 40 years, so he's got a lot of knowledge to drop on us today, including the benefits of track work, speed work for runners of any distance. Doesn't matter if you're trying to run 5Ks, 10Ks, marathons, whatever, speed work can benefit you, and he's going to explain how. But before we get to that, I want to talk about the Central Kentucky All-Comers Track Meets, which are happening on June 18th and July 2nd. They are being presented by John's Bluegrass Racing Company, ASICS, and the University of Kentucky Kinesiology and Health Promotion Department. And these are all-comers meets, meaning anyone is welcome to join us, all ages. Whether you're 8 years old or 80 years old, you can recapture your glory days of track, or just try an event for the first time, or just come as a spectator and cheer people on. It's going to be a lot of fun. Again, that's June 18th, July 2nd. It's only $5 per meet to sign up, and you can do that at our events page, johnsrunwalkshop.com/events. And part of the fun is that our ASICS rep, Meredith McKinney, is going to be with us with a couple of shoe demos. So you can try on some awesome ASICS shoes while you're there. And Meredith is going to tell us about those right now. Hi, Meredith.
Hi, Matt. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for being on the show. So tell us a little bit about the shoes you're bringing on June 18th and July 2nd.
Yeah, so I will have our Metaspeed Sky and Metaspeed Edge Paris edition. So both of those are our racing carbon-plated shoes. So you all have a chance to give both of those a try. Okay,
great. So let's start with the details of one of those. Let's start with the Edge.
Sure, sounds good. So Metaspeed Sky Edge here. This is, again, going to be one of our racing shoes, carbon plated. Some similarities between the shoes that you'll hear some overlap of, I'll kind of run through. So from kind of top to bottom, we have our ASICS grip on the bottom. So that's improved durability and traction of the shoe. Updated from Metaspeed Edge Plus, the previous version, we have our Flight Foam Turbo Plus. So the Turbo Plus foam is going to be lighter and softer than the previous foam, which is what you're seeing in a lot of race and daily training styled shoes. In terms of the carbon plate, it's a full length carbon plate, so great for guiding and propelling you forward. And in terms of the Edge, it actually has a more angled plate. So this is going to help give you more forward propulsion, going to give you that roll. Great for those cadence style runners. So runners who tend to increase their speed by increasing their cadence or taking more strides. So this is intended for that style runner. In terms of weight of the shoe, it's one of the lightest carbon plated shoes on the market, averaging about 6.5 ounces, depending on your shoe size. So give or take, smaller or larger. So that's our Metaspeed Edge.
All right. Awesome. Well, let's talk about the Sky.
Yes. So our Sky here, it's, I don't know if my screen's large enough for you to see both shoes maybe, but the differentiating factor between the Edge and the Sky is the plate placement. So in our Sky here, it's actually going to be a wider plate sitting more evenly between the foam. So in terms of the Sky and the wider plate, that is going to give you more vertical propulsion. So that's intended for more stride style runners. So those runners that by increasing the length of their stride, they are able to improve their time, conserve more energy, whatnot. That's what this is going to help for. So stride style versus cadence style, when you have the opportunity to try both shoes, you can kind of get a feel of maybe what style of runner you are. Not all runners are aware, but again, more vertical propulsion intended to help lengthen your stride, conserve more energy. That wider plate is also going to allow for a little more stability as well. So that's something that is helpful in these carbon plated racing shoes. Sometimes they don't feel quite as stable as your daily trainer, especially if you're new to the racing style format of a shoe. So, but aside from that, the shoe itself the tech of the shoe in terms of the foam, the outsole, our Motion Rep 2.0 upper, that is the same between the Sky and the Edge. The weight, again, is about the same, about that 6.5 ounces pending size, and drop on both shoe is 5 millimeters.
Those sound great. And again, you can try those on at the Central Kentucky All-Comers Track Meets, June 18th, July 2nd, details at our events page. Meredith, one more question before we go. The Olympics, that's coming up very soon. Do we have any ASICS athletes that are going to be wearing these shoes or anything else from ASICS?
Yes, you will see our athletes most likely in both styles. Kind of preferred shoe per athlete will vary. But yes, you will see some of our distance athletes in the Metaspeed Paris Edge and Sky.
We'll be watching for that. Well, thank you, Meredith. Appreciate you coming on the show today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, Gary Steele, great to have you on Kentucky Running. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm quite excited about this. Yeah,
we're going to get into a lot of talk about track and giving some good advice for people of all ages who want to either get into it or continue doing track throughout their life. But first, one thing I'm curious about, looking at some of your accomplishments, in 2001, you were on the steering committee for the Louisville Triple Crown of Running, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And you helped get the Papa John's 10-miler approved as the USATF 10-mile championship, which is pretty big deal. So I just want to know, what kind of work goes into getting a race approved as a championship?
Yeah. So part of the whole process is you have to submit a race to USA Track and Field. And then that particular race has to obviously be a certified course that has to be measured multiple times. I think it's 3 times you have to measure the course to make sure it's right. And then you submit that as one proposal. And then what they do is they look at open dates and look at participation and sponsorship. And then once they award that, then there's a whole series of things that take place. Like you invite elite athletes. In that particular one, we had elite athletes that were invited to participate in it. And part of that elite process is you make sure there's hotel accommodations, there's a way to get them from their hotels to the starting lines, any gear or management they have with their team to make sure that's managed. And then obviously they run a race. It's all certified and accomplished, and getting them back to their hotel afterwards. So there's a lot involved when the elite does that. Now, what's exciting about that is when you have a national championship, of course, there's the elite group, which is female, male, female, but then everybody else gets to participate in the same course, right? So it's kind of cool you're running with some of the elite athletes of the world, and you get to see them. And then really everybody else gets to mark themselves down as, hey, this is what we did. So it was pretty exciting because Papa John's had wanted to sponsor a race. And then idea was like, you know what? Could we apply to get this applied to do a 10-mile championship? Because there's all mile championships, 5K, 10K, 10-mile, or half marathon, marathon.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a lot of work, but really rewarding, right?
It's a lot of work.
Well, let's get into track work. First of all, how does track work benefit runners of any distance? Like if I'm training for a marathon, do I really need to be doing short sprints on a track?
Yeah, I think a very good question. So what track does is really trying to get out of your comfort zone. That's really what it amounts to. And whether you're a marathon runner or an ultra runner is the variability of speed, right? And so what we try to do is when I say out kind of comfort zone, you want to be outside of comfort zone so that when you go and run at your normal pace, it feels more comfortable to you. Say, for instance, you're out there running and you say, hey, listen, I'm not really sure what track does to help me. If you're used to running an 8-minute mile, periodically, you can do short sprint stuff at 7-minute miles. When you go out and run the 8-minute mile again, it feels a little more comfortable than it did before. Because if all you've ever done is 8-minute miles on all your training, and then you get into a race and you're like, okay, I want to run 750, it feels really odd. Okay, it makes your body really hurt, right? And so what you're trying to do with any kind of speed work, when we talk about speed work and track workout, I include that as like tempo runs and variable speed runs and fartleks and all those kind of things are variable things. We just do it on a track because it's a measured distance. I tell people whether you're walking or whether you're running or whatever you do. So example is my wife would walk, say she walks every day a mile and a half. And so when she goes to track workout, she may be walking on the track while we're doing workouts, which could be an hour and a half workout. Well, she walks 3 miles. So what she's done then is extended her ability to go further on a controlled surface, flat surface, right? So it's all those variables. So what that does is helps you, makes your lungs, your bodies, and your tendons, everything get better and stronger because you're actually doing something abnormal to your normal running cadence. I've been doing track workouts personally and with athletes for more than 50 years. So what I see is the benefit of them doing something they're not comfortable with. And I hear it from runners all the time. It's like, oh yeah, I'm running this thing, but I could never run that pace. And so how you get there is, well, let's practice that pace, And so I subject runners almost immediately. If you ever do anything with me, around me, you're going to see what we call date pace. Is that, okay, what is your current pace, for a 5K or 10K or marathon, right? What's your current pace? So what's your goal pace? And then a very, very, very critical, making sure you don't jump to one to the other. For instance, you're an 8-minute miler for a 10K and you want to be a 6-minute miler for 10K. Well, not sure that's possible, okay? And if it is possible, it's not something you're going to achieve in one season, right? It's over time. And so what you have to do is let your body experience what that feels like at that faster pace on shorter distances, and then continue to extend that distance of faster pace till it gets more comfortable to you.
That makes a lot of sense. Any specific success stories you have of athletes that you've coached who've improved their performance through track workouts?
Yeah, I think the two that come up, and I always think about this, is I had an athlete, several athletes that have run, and they pretty much recreational runners or runners that they ran in the past, and they wanted to get back into a 5K. And in one particular season I had two athletes, one in particular that in a 5K improved 3 minutes and 45 seconds in a 5K in one season, which is unbelievable. Okay. And then probably the marathoners, really, I had two marathoners that improved almost 2 hours in a marathon. So if you think about somebody going out and running a 6-hour marathon and running a 4-hour marathon, is like, how is that even possible, right? Well, it has to do with a lot of adding miles and doing quality workouts and that thing. But also it's just about them understanding that they do have an opportunity to run that way. I actually heard one of my runners, Trek Tuesday, just recently say their goal had always been to run a 2-hour half marathon, and they got to like 2:05, and they said it's like they're right on the cuffs of running a sub 2-hour half marathon, which is pretty amazing, right? But what's funny is, then they say, yeah, their mom said, so there's someday you can run a 4.5-hour marathon. There's no way they can run a 4.5-hour marathon. And I'm thinking, okay, be careful what you say, because if you do the conversion, right, you should be able to, if you can run sub 2 hours and a half, you should be able to break 4.5 hours in a marathon, right? And it's all about mental preparation and physical preparation at that point. So I think that's what track brings. It's more of for me, it's discipline. It's just getting out there and being disciplined in what you're doing. I tell runners all the time, run your pace, don't run my pace, don't run somebody else's pace, run your pace, because we can slowly progress you to a faster pace, but don't go out immediately and think that you can run really fast the first time, because you're not going to be able to sustain a track workout. I usually try to run somewhere between 2 miles and a little over 3 miles in a track session. So when we track Tuesday, they're going to be sprint for at least 2 miles and sometimes up to 3 miles of sprint workout, which for some people seems like a lot. But when you break it down and you're like, well, yeah, but you're only running for a minute and you're doing it 10 times, it seems, that seems doable, right? Rather than say, okay, I'm going to make you run 2 miles as hard as you can, right?
So it seems like not only do you need the discipline to get out there and push yourself, but you also need to cultivate some discipline to not go too hard when you shouldn't be, right? Not to overexert yourself.
Absolutely right. So what I do is I have a chart. I have lots of charts, and it says, okay, what is your current 5K pace? And then it breaks it down by each segment. So every 100 meters, 200 meters, 300 meters, 400 meters, 600 meters, all the way up, and says, okay, this is where you should be training. Okay. And what I see sometimes is I'll say, hey, listen, you're an 8-minute miler for a 5K. So therefore you should be running at 400 meters in 2 minutes. And then I go out and see you run 130. And I'm thinking, okay, time out. Okay. It's not that you can't run 130, but you're not going to be able to run 6 of those. Okay. And so just stay in control of your pace, and we'll get you to that pace of 130, but it's not going to be today, right? It'll be over time. It's that progression of saying, okay, where are you at and how do you get there? And I like a lot of variabilities. And when I say variabilities is, somebody says, well, how fast can you run a mile? They can say that, but say, well, what does that mean for 300 meters or 600 meters or 1,000 meters? They're completely clueless, right? And so that's part of critiquing of a coach is saying, listen, I'm going to give you distances you're not really comfortable running, and it's not something you run on a regular basis. But what I'm doing is trying to create that pace within a distance that I know I can control that you don't have a control. If I said run at 400 meters, you're like, oh, I know what that is. Run at 300 meters, like, how fast do I run? And I'll say, oh, you need to run this time. And so what that does is make you run within the zone you're supposed to be running in, right? So it helps people to understand, okay, cool, I'm where I'm supposed to be, right? Or, hey, I'm making the progression I'm supposed to be making.
Where in the training program do you build in recovery?
Part of the whole process that I talk to runners, I talk to them every single probably week about is I talk about the building blocks for a running program. And it doesn't matter whether you're a beginner or you're an experienced runner. It's all about when we talk about stressing the system. And stressing the system, to be clear, okay, could be speed. It could be amount of miles you put in. It could be a lot of different things that you do that you consider stress, right? Amount of hours on your feet, how long you ran or how fast you ran. Those are all stressors, right? And then once you stress the body, then you do a recovery. And what recovery for me is, it's different for different people. And when I say that, because I base a lot of things on heart rate. Yeah, I want heart rate under 110, right? Well, under 110 could be different for different people. I have some of my runners that if they recover, they're at 120, 130. And that's just as low as they're going to get, right? Because they have a higher heart rate. So then you can say, okay, you need to take 3-minute rest or 110. And I'll say that sometimes. Either I need you to jog a 400 meters or I need you to get your heart rate under 110. So you get a couple options, and coaches will allow that to happen. If I have a group of 10 runners on a track and say, okay, I need everybody to run 400 meters and then I want your heart rate of 110. Well, if we all run 400 meters, we're obviously going to run the 400 meters at a faster or slower pace. So there could be a 30-second gap between the first runner finishing and the last runner finishing. Well, it's not really fair to say, okay, everybody gets a 2-minute rest or everybody gets heart rate at 110, because sometimes the runner finishing and the last runner doesn't get as much recovery as the first runner because of the time, right? And so if you said, hey, go on your heart rate, people then after the first run people will start rolling off and they'll start their second, third, and fourth runs. And some people will be standing around because that way it gives people equal rest and recovery for what they're doing. It's a good barometer. And what you have to do as a person is like, okay, listen, I'm recovered at 120, so I can go. So when I get to under 120, I'm going to go again, right? And go to the next rep, okay? And so it ends up being where you finish the workout at the end of a Track Tuesday and people finish at a different time. And that's okay because they've still all done the work and they still all done the recovery. So it's really about stressing the system, recovery, and then what I talk about to adjust. Know where your current pace is and what your goal pace is, okay? And I help you manage what you think where you're currently at, where you want to get to, okay? And so what we do is it's a stair step. Out every 14 to 21 days, I look at this person's schedule when I'm coaching them and say, okay, listen, we've stressed the system, we've recovered to adapt, okay? We're going to adjust the system, and then we're going to adapt to the new program. So what happens is runners, as they progress and get better and better, you have to constantly be adjusting and adapting to the new, form of running you're doing. What it does is show a progression of getting better. And some people, it's not about getting better. It's like, hey, I just want to be healthy and fitness, right? And I just want to be able to go out and run with my friends. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But as your friends run with you, is if they start progressing and you're saying, hey, listen, I can't keep up anymore. Are there things you can do to improve that? Yeah. And you don't want to kill yourself doing it, right? There is a sensible way of going about doing it.
Speaking of adjusting, let's say someone's doing track workouts on their own. What are some signs that they need to adjust their training or seek out guidance from a coach like yourself?
Since I post the workouts every Track Tuesday, and I know there's a lot more people that do track on their own or they've got other programs do. And I think it's about listening to your body, right? Is if you have a set time you want to run on your track workouts or a speed workout, okay, is do that. When you start seeing no progression and you're not getting better doing the work and you're struggling or you're injuring yourself, I think that's when you seek out a coach and say, okay, let's go to a slower pace. How we doing? Or let's change the workouts. Talk quite a bit of runners about this, and this is just my theory. And we're going to go in a progression type workout. And then when I say progression, hey, this week I'm going to do 6 200s with a 200 jog between. Next week I'm going to do 7. I'm going to do 8. I'm going to do 9. I'm going to do 10. And that's the progression. Every week I'm just going to add another one. there's nothing wrong with that. And people do hill repeats. So we're going to do hill repeats 4 this week, 5. Okay. I like the variability of workouts. So I'm not saying I don't do that type of thing, but it'll be, if you ever look at my Track Tuesdays through a year, you'll notice that what I do is when I do it, I'll say, okay, this month I'm going to do 400 repeats and we're going to do 8. And then another month we'll do 9 and then we'll do 10. It's not going to be week after week. And then what I do is like a lot of variability. So I may do ladders. So a ladder would be 200 meters, 300 meters, 400 meters, 600 meters, and then back down, 400 meters, 300 meters, 200. That's a ladder. You go up and down the ladder. Or there'll be a progression where you'll have 4 by 200, 4 by 400, 1 by 800. And so all those different variables. And why I do that is to give your body a different change to what you're currently doing and mix things up a little bit. Some people question why that is done. It's just I think there's the monotony. If you're just like, hey, every week I got to run 400. And I'm not sure I'm doing them, but not sure where I'm getting with it, right? And so that variability for me as a coach, it allows me to listen to the athlete and say, hey, if you're not doing well with this, maybe we change it up a little bit for you. I'll give you an example. So I had 2 high school athletes when I coached in Louisville. One of them was a 3-time state champion. The other one was a 2-time runner-up. Okay. So imagine being a teammate and your friend always wins a state meet. Okay. And so in one particular year, those 2 athletes, one athlete who was a state champion, he would not be successful if he ran more than 35 miles a week. He's a fast guy and he couldn't take the load. The other guy, if you didn't get him above 45 to 60 miles a week, he didn't run well. And so it was really interesting in working with those 2 is the one that needed more mileage. I say, hey, go out and get a couple miles in before we start practicing, and you do your practice session, or after practice, hey, go do a 2-mile cool down. So he was able, and then the weekend runs were longer, he was able to do those. At the state meet, they were separated by about 3 seconds at the finish line. Completely different programs. Okay. Did the speed session, but their mileage was completely different. And so you, as a coach, you have to adapt your workouts to the athlete and not say, hey, this is one way fits all. Okay. I don't believe in that.
No cookie cutter training programs in track, right? Okay. Do you have any specific nutrition tips that you recommend to your runners?
Yeah. Other than just eating normal and not trying to, starve yourself too much. I think the biggest, from nutritional wise, especially for me and older athletes or most athletes, right, is hydration. I think hydration sometimes is missed as I'm drinking enough water. Well, are you really, right? And I think hydration, if the science tells you that by the time you realize you're getting thirsty, it's usually too late, right? That your sweat glands, you're sweating out of your body and you're getting to a point where, hey, it's not working. And I found that people, that if you don't keep hydrated, it affects you in ways you don't understand, right? I see a lot of athletes that struggle late in races or middle races, and it's because hydration, especially when it gets hot and humid here in Kentucky, right? I don't think you realize the amount of sweat that you're losing over a period of time. And so what happens is, if people that are marathon runners and ultras and half marathon runners understand that you get to the point of, hey, you get so much energy out of your body, and then body starts chewing on the fat, right? You start burning fat late in a race, right? You have to be able to simulate that in during the week and during your training so that your body knows what that feels like, right? And so part of that is making sure you're hydrated. I think hydration makes the joints run well and the muscles run well. I noticed for me as I've gotten older, I joked the other day when we were in one of these panels, and I said, yeah, in the early days when we used to race competitively, when one of the guys reached for water, everybody would surge, right? And it's because the rest of us weren't smart enough to do that. We needed to, hydrate, right? Nowadays, if I don't hydrate, it's like falling off a cliff for me. If I don't keep hydrated, my pace immediately drops off, and I know it's a hydration thing for me. Keeping energy in your body, and there's lots of protein bars and wafers out there you can take and gel packs, and I think there's a lot of people that stick to the policy, like especially if you're doing a long run or a marathon or half marathon. It's like, hey, every 3 miles you take a gel pack whether you think you need it or not, because you've got to keep that energy in there, because you want to keep some fluid in that tank that you're going to need later in the race, right?
Yeah, great advice. So, of course, one great thing about running is it's something people can do for most of their lives. But what are some benefits to doing track work as we get older?
Yeah, I think it's about the flexibility and the movement. When I would say track work, I hear people on track work, I'm not a track runner and I can't run track. I tell you, the variety of athletes that come to my Track Tuesday are everything from 12 and 13 minute milers to 5.5 minute milers. And so what it does, it keeps the flexibility, keeps your lungs breathing, it work up a good sweat. It makes me mentally sharper, feel better. Okay, emotionally after you get done. That's what I notice when people go out and do track workout. I think it's a camaraderie. I think I don't say it as much as some of my athletes do, but some of my athletes on Track Tuesday said it's that now I'm responsible to someone else that I'm supposed to be there, right? And I don't say that, right? But they just feel an obligation to be there, right? Oh, I know somebody's going to be there, so I got to go, right? And so that part of it is some of the greatest joy of Track Tuesday, especially here in Lexington, is the fact that some of the runners that run for me didn't really know each other before, and now they're like running buddies, right? They go to all kinds of races and they travel abroad and they do things, right? It's pretty cool because they didn't even know who this person was, and now they don't know if they could go without him on a run, right? So I think that all helps, and that's part of. I think as you get older runners, you're moving around different groups, right? It's one thing that as older runners, I think you enjoy is the socializing of it. Okay, you don't have to be fast. Nobody's going to make fun of you at a track workout, right? You're going to get the workout done, and you do what you can do and keep it going and enjoy it and have a good time. I mean, I wouldn't be doing it for as long as I've been doing it if I didn't enjoy it, not only in the coaching part, but on the personal part too. So it challenges me as I get older. It's challenged me to run with some of the younger clients sometimes too. So
that's fantastic. All right. Well, thanks, Gary. I think that's a great place to end it. And if anyone wants to join Gary sometime at Track Tuesday, where can we do that?
Yeah, at Woodford County High School track. It's in Versailles. Woodford County is the current school. They're building a new school, so we're going to continue to be at that track. There is times that I'm out on the Legacy Trail, and we do workouts there, but not very often. And then we do really hill repeats and grass runs at Masterson Station. So welcome to join us anytime. Be happy to have you.
And are we going to see you at Asbury University this summer?
We are. I'm actually signed up for both days, so June 18th and July.
July 2nd, yeah.
Both those days I'll be there.
Yeah, those are going to be fun times, the all-comers meets.
It'll be fun. Yep.
See you there. Thanks a lot, Gary.
Thanks, Matt.